Dejan Mitkovski in Vancouver in the flesh again. This is the third time we're meeting in person, right?
Yeah.
Austin, 2023.
Yep.
Nashville last year, 2024.
That's right.
It's 2025.
Vancouver.
Yeah, end of August. Not a better time to be in Vancouver than end of August.
It is beautiful out. That's no doubt.
Okay, do you like Vancouver?
I love Vancouver. It's actually one of my favorite international cities.
How so?
You have this like really interesting blend of everything. You have this major metropolis with skyscrapers and businesses and a vibrant downtown. You have this wonderful park in Stanley Park, just north, right? You have the mountains in the background. You have the cusp of the ocean at your feet. And there might be no nicer people on the planet than Canadians.
And Vancouver specifically is like a very chill place.
Yep.
To be.
So when you mix all of that together, I mean, it's a wonderful town. The first time I was in Vancouver was 2009. And I've said it ever since then. It's one of my favorite.
Was it business or?
It was a pleasure.
Okay.
Yep, it was a pleasure. Lived in Seattle, and
oh yeah.
I drove up with my then girlfriend, now wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was fruitful.
It was fruitful. Yeah. So we drove up just for the experience because everyone told us how wonderful Vancouver was.
Where did you guys go in Vancouver?
Oh my God! So there is the Asian district, the Chinatown.
Yeah.
And we were always told it is the best food you're going to get outside of Asia.
It's hard to beat, yeah.
It's hard to beat. So we came up for that. And then we actually went to a concert.
Okay.
Yeah. So we went to a concert. It was a wedding gift for me. So.
What kind of concert? I'm not gonna dig too deep into it, but now you said it. And
you're gonna dig deep.
I just have to know.
So there has to be some context to this. I am a person of the. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, right? And so hip hop and rap were very big in America in that time. So it was a Jay-Z and Kanye West concert.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Jay-Z and Kanye West, that was a long time ago. It was
a long time.
They were
that was a long time ago.
Kanye was the protege of Jay-Z at the time.
They were I mean they put an album out together.
Okay.
But it's also I love all types of music. I will probably say Led Zeppelin's my favorite band of all time, right? But I do love that genre of music.
No, that is an experience, I can imagine.
It was a great experience, but the concert, being in the city for the weekend, just great time.
All right.
Thanks for hosting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome back. Welcome back. It's good to have you here. And you flew from Detroit?
I did.
But how long have you been living in Detroit?
Oh my goodness. I moved back to Detroit in 2012. I moved back in Detroit.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, 2013. 2013.
Okay.
We moved back because we were living in Seattle. Moved to Seattle for work purposes, and moved back because that's where family's from. My wife and I started our own family, so we moved back when she was pregnant with our first.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So we can kind of wind the clock back because you and I did multiple podcast interviews. All of them were incredibly fun.
Oh,
right?
Fun.
Yeah, but never one like this. I want to take the opportunity to get to know Dejan Mitkovski from a different angle and also to kind of see that in the context of what's been happening over the past 25 years with digital transformation, data, AI. There's so much noise around this, right? So we can breathe in some clarity into the discussion. So 25 years ago, we're talking 2000s, right? So we're just past the 90s.
Yeah.
Right? Where were you in 2000?
Finished university 2002. Found my first role at a regional builder. Undergrad was focused in on more of the sciences. Physics was probably my favorite subject, which was probably where I get my math knack from.
Yeah.
Right. I always loved the mindset for physicists where the probabilities will teach you everything.
Yeah.
There's a probability I can take this pen and try to throw it through this table. It'll never go through. But mathematically, it could. Right, because there's molecules moving here, there's molecules moving.
There is
here,
that,
and there is that infinite smallest of smallest percentages that those molecules will line up perfectly, where it go perfectly right through.
It's the physics of miracles,
and that fascinated me. So that's what got my mind a little bit more into the math sphere. Is like early into my education.
And then what did you actually? So you went to university to study exactly what? Like, what was your vision at that time? Because you probably didn't think that I'm gonna get into like data science leadership.
No. Yeah, I did not. Coming from immigrant parents, where they said you can do anything you want in life, well, as long as you're an engineer, a doctor, or a lawyer, right? And so that the medical sphere is where my head was at. And I did my undergrad in chemistry, physics, and biology. So everything that was leading me down that path. And it was actually my very last year of university. Sat down with a family doctor, guy who was young, mid-30s, and him and I had lunch, and he completely changed the trajectory of my career.
Interesting.
Yeah. He painted the picture, he asked me why I wanted to go into the medical field. Of course you want to help people. But I think it was ingrained in me that I had to pick one of those three, and that was the most interesting out of those three options that were anything I wanted to be.
And you guys sat down to talk because you wanted his...
I thought it was a good idea to see what he did.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is like, throughout my career, one consistent theme is learning and curiosity. So I wanted to see what he did every day. Did he love his job? Because I'm about to go on to this adventure if I went to medical school to then do that for the rest of my life and spend a lot of time educating myself. So
a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't actually go and see how that looks like on the front lines, right? They just kind of follow. Everyone does that. I'm supposed to do that, so I'm just gonna roll with it.
He painted. And listen, anyone who watches this podcast, I don't want anyone to be deterred from ever going into the medical field. But this is just a story that was given to me. He said, he asked me how old I was. I was 21 at the time. He said, okay, so if you go into this field, what are you going to, like, are you ready to commit for the next 4 to 6 years of your life where you're studying nonstop, right? I said, of course. He goes, then after that, are you ready to then do residency where you're making next to no money, you probably owe $500,000, can barely pay those bills, and you're still working 100 hours a week. You're ready to do that for the next 4 or 5 years? And I said, okay. And he started painting this picture. and he was like 35. He goes, listen, he was like, my first real job is when I was 34 years old. That was my first real job coming out of residency. And so he painted this really interesting picture that college was training to do a job, right? And yes, you have to love your job, and there's some ideals that come with that. And then he told me one story. He said he told me he met his wife in medical school. And I said, well, where does she practice? He goes, she's a lawyer. Went through medical school, did 1 year residency, did not like it, went back to law school, now does medical law. Now, I'm sure she's fine.
But she would have spent like 20 years in school too.
But she's spent 20 years. So I think that point there was where I did not know what I wanted to do, right? And so I went into more of a marketing PM role at this smaller company. It was a regional builder. Right. So a lot project management, done some marketing, trying to bring people in. And that's kind of like, you start using a little bit of data in that type of role, right? Like, what did we do? What kind of initiative did we launch? What kind of campaign did we launch? Or what products are we trying to deliver? Are those products equitable for the company? Are you making money? Are you not making money? Right? Some level of analysis started coming through. And that's where I really started to enjoy that aspect of that job.
How old were you at the time, roughly?
Yeah,
Just like
22,
okay, early 20s.
early 20, 23 years old. Yeah,
Okay.
so this is where I would say it's like my first taste of what analytics is. At the very, very highest, most surface level, right? It was a great experience, a great learning experience for me. You can always rest in your laurels, and I'll tell you, there's always these crucible moments in your life. I went out for a promotion, and it was internal. It was internal, right? Promotion. So I went out for this job. I had my resume ready. I handed it over to a VP at that time, and he looked at me and said, "You don't have the resume for this job." Right? And at that moment, I signed up the next day to get my MBA. Right? Because I said no one will ever say that to me again. But it's always been this inflection of continuous learning, continuous education, because I think a lot of people can kind of get stuck in that kind of like that first job or their second job, and never and not always be pushing themselves, not always
set you on a track.
It sets you on a track, and you think that's the track, but I don't think that's always the track, right? Because for me, that pushed me to. I was fortunate enough to land a job at Microsoft.
Yeah.
After that. That's where I tell people I cut my teeth in analytics, right? Starting off in analytics, starting off in, I'd say, more surface level at the beginning, right? Where you're just looking at, if you're working with advertisers, you're looking at CPAs and click-through rates, right? If you're looking at product, you're looking at maybe time on site, right? But you're doing a lot more reporting, right? But it's at that time that you're really going to see a huge shift in digital marketing and analytics on the rise. Like, I think that's where it started, like, really extrapolating. This is probably late 2000s time frame.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
So we can place it because in 2000s, when you got into the whole game,
Yeah.
right? And we think back, okay, well, what happened in 2000, right? Like 99, The Matrix comes out, just so people can kind of place it.
Yeah, absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Okay, so we kind of calibrate what level of technology were we at a time, right? Then early 2000s. So what was the buzz at the time around, mobile devices, digital transformation that started to kind of come together? Maybe we didn't even have that phrase in the beginning of the 2000s.
I don't think they had that phrase at the beginning. I think what it was a lot of relational databases.
Okay.
You had a lot of SQL Server and Cognos of just storing certain transactions that were happening and just looking at those transactions.
Who was doing that in a company, in a big company? Was that a specific function at the time, or
I think,
who owned it?
Yeah, I don't know if they were I think finance did a lot of it.
Okay.
Right? I think that was a lot for financial reporting. I think that they gave that to, I had an analyst title at Microsoft, right? So they give access to analysts on certain data elements, so then you could then do a lot of reporting. And there was a lot of reporting at the time. But I think, and think about at that time, Facebook, right? I believe, and you'd have to go back. I believe Twitter, like all of those, they started, and I don't. We'd have to look up when Twitter. I know Facebook was just launching, right? Google was on the huge rise at this time.
Yeah.
It wasn't small, but it wasn't the conglomerate that it was today.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, and I think Facebook was 2007
when it really became
something big, right? And so, and then you have to start thinking about technology. Like, what happened in those years? MongoDB launched in 2009. That's right at that time frame, right? The white papers of Hadoop, they were published earlier, but Hadoop adoption, and for people who might not know Hadoop is the blueprint and almost like the godfather of today's data ecosystems.
Yeah.
Data lakes and data warehouses were built off of that foundational elements of Hadoop. Hadoop adoption didn't start actually clipping until 2007, 2008. So you're talking about at this time, but again, that's when people started being interested in them. It's almost like, and we'll get to AI, but it's like there's interest, but then there's usability and people actually using. So I think there's a lot of companies out there that was like, well, that's interesting. Yeah, but we're not going to start using that yet. because you don't know
what were they waiting for? So that's an interesting example to look back at now. What's happening with AI, right?
Well, exactly. I think people at that time were just learning to understand how databases no longer have to be relational. You can start connecting different data systems and different databases. You can actually start looking at data in a way that's much more interesting, right? So you don't only have to say, well, I can only look at what people did within this marketing ecosystem. I can say, well, maybe I can start pairing what they did in marketing with what they did in my product online. Now, this is where the digital marketing, this is the explosion of digital marketing that at this age helped connect all of these things.
When did they kind of realize, or when did that phrase come about that data is the new oil? Because when I got into the whole data world, and that was around 2014, right, through data-driven marketing also specifically, then soon after, the talk of the town was, data is the new oil. Data is the new oil.
Yeah.
And then now the narrative shifts.
I want to say it's a few years after, but I think at this time, so my own experience, right? At Microsoft, I was doing product analytics. So Windows Live, because people have to Google.
Everyone uses Windows Live.
Oh, yeah, people have to Google the products, right? They were the only consumer-facing products, right? When I say the only consumer, like there were enterprise products that they had like Excel and PowerPoint, but you're talking about like Hotmail and Messenger. So I did the analytics for those, right? But this is where I started realizing the power of stitching data elements together, right? What did people consume in the digital marketing ecosystem? And then those people, then what trends did they do within the products? And then as we started inserting products or inserting messages to them or certain actions that we wanted, what are the behavioral analytics like?
Yeah.
And then we started analyzing and really understanding personalization. It was not the first time it was done.
Yeah.
It was not even the first time it was done at Microsoft. But for me in my career, I started thinking about, wow, can we give individual people the things that they want, or cohorts of people? Because behavior will dictate what they want. Yeah. And then we can start testing. So this is, for me, started A/B testing. Well, what if I put a red button versus a blue button, for example? Right? Well, this group of people really like the red button, but this group of people really like the blue button. Cool. Can our engineers now make that true? Right? And so I think this is where also there's a lot of technologies and emerging BI tools started coming out. If I remember correctly, Tableau came out in 2009.
And was that the front runner, Tableau, and then Power BI and the others kind of follow suit?
Yeah, I think they follow suit. I think Tableau came out, 2009. They IPO'd in 2013.
Okay, so Microsoft just said, okay, this is real, this is legit, we gotta go.
But Microsoft has its own. I'll tell you when I started using, right, at Microsoft, and then I went to startup for a year after that, leading BI. Power Pivot in Excel. Think about connecting data sources.
Yeah.
So in Excel, you can almost make your small own little database.
Yeah, for sure.
And people and analysts like me started doing that.
A lot of companies still have that.
A lot of companies still do that. There's probably a little maturation there. But a lot of companies still start doing that. So going back to your big data question, I think this is the very beginning, but big data wasn't really coined yet at that time. I think big data started coming out probably 2012, 2013 time frame. Yeah. So you have this emergence of BI tools and techniques. You have and like I said, you have these like Power Pivot in Excel, like I said, like Tableau, where now analysts are starting to actually look at all of these various transactions and actually looking at a user's journey.
Yeah.
That wasn't done before.
Yeah, they didn't look at it that way.
They didn't look at it that way. Now, there were some companies like the Netflixes of the world, some companies like the Amazons of the world may have been doing this already. Yeah. The very sophisticated data companies that are still, by the way, the most sophisticated data companies that we have today.
They're what we call like digital natives, quote unquote. Right?
That's right. But a lot of companies were figuring this out at that time. So I think big data started like that term was coined, like I said, 2000, like in those in the early 2010s.
Early 2010s. I remember that anecdote. Maybe it was Walmart, right, where the girl got in the mail pamphlets for pregnant women. And it's like, why did I get this?
Yeah.
Right? And then it turned out that based on her consumption preferences, Walmart figured out that she's probably pregnant. Whether that's true, by the way, that story or not, I assume it is.
Might be folklore.
Might be folklore, but as usually with folklore, it's truer than the actual story because
at least it's more interesting.
Yeah, you see, exactly. so there's a truth in there because I still remember it, and that was in part what drove this whole hype about. Okay, data will be the new oil. That's where everything is going. This targeting. Let's talk about it a little bit. Big data, actually, because that's like one of those things that big data was all the buzz, but big data kind of disappeared from the discussions.
I don't think anyone knew what it was.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone knew what it was. There was a lot of papers published in those, like I said, in the early 2010s about it, right, where they were connecting. It's almost like they were connecting these three different areas of data, right? One is technology, one is analysis, and there was one paper that talked about mythology. And then you're like, what does mythology have to do with in this conversation at all? Well, the idea behind mythology is there's this higher form of intelligence and decision making as you connect data systems together.
Interesting.
Right? So, and I think that's what big data was. I mean, that's also the time of Internet of Things. I still don't know what Internet of Things is.
IoT, yeah.
IoT, but that was a huge shift in that space where people just started talking about big data, big data. This is where data is the new oil, right? And I think it's at that time. You started truly seeing people harness data, right? And not just dispose of it. People started adopting, right? People started adopting these new technologies, these new warehouses. People started, not data lakes, but warehouses at that time of at least storing their data as they're trying to figure out what to do with it, right? So I think that was the inflection point. That truly started. Hold on, there was a stat. I think in 1986, over 99% of all data is analog, right? 2007, 94% of all data is digital.
It's 20 years later. Yeah.
Think about that, and that's 2007, and now you are starting to store more data. Right. And I think that's where our profession, our industry, right? What people do in this ecosystem really began. Because before that, like I said, it was very siloed, very ad hoc. I don't think that people saw a lot of value in it. But as people started extrapolating insights, people started extrapolating value out of it. I think that's where the power comes in data.
So we mentioned with big data, just to spend another minute there with the mythology. So the mythology was that if you connect all these data systems, there's some emergent higher intelligence. When you say higher intelligence, do you mean intelligence in a way where we think about artificial intelligence, that there's some kind of mind coming together, or a higher level of intelligence for the business because it's making smarter decisions?
That's what it is. You're making smarter, better decisions, right? I think that's where, like I said, that's where analysts and data scientists truly started coming into their own element. I believe it was 2012. That's like the data science is not new, right? There's always been some level of data science. But 2012, in my mind, and there's papers on this, I believe Harvard wrote an article that, I believe it was 2012-ish, that data science was the sexiest new job to approach, right? And it's like, okay, that's interesting.
Oh, the 21st century, which is an interesting claim. It's an interesting claim, right?
That's right.
We're still in the 21st century. And is data science the sexiest profession? I mean, it's evolving.
But back then, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's where you started really understanding, and going back to what you talked about earlier, which is mobile, right? So you have all of this data. You have people who are practitioners, and then the mythology, which is how can we extract information and make better decisions, right? So you go from doing descriptive analytics, not to be very textbook or academic about it, to more predictive analytics. Now that's why we're talking about data science. I don't want to know what my customer, John Smith, did. I want to know what John Smith is going to do or what he wants. Right? So as is coming together now, this is where a lot of the power comes in, right? But it has to be with the data being available, and then techniques and ways in which people can then use that data can become available. It was right around that time R started having huge adoption. Python was around, right? At first, R was much more used than Python from a language perspective, a coding language perspective. But a lot of people started using those two languages. Why? Because they had pre-built packages that allowed you to then predict, that allowed you to have this higher level thinking of your data. And listen, predicting behavior wasn't new, but it was almost like the elite companies did it.
Yeah.
Not everyone. It wasn't scaled. Amazon's been predicting and using recommender models for a long time. Early 2000s. 2003-ish, probably, right? Then you have the Netflixes of the world. And I use those too because to me, those are like highly data-driven companies. And highly data-driven. They're great companies, right? When it comes to data. Still are, right? If you were to say, who are the most data-driven companies in the world, like you're going to add some to the mix, but are they in the top tier? I think so.
And apart from their brand, it's that their data-driven practices are their biggest assets.
That's what it is, right? They've been doing recommender models and recommender systems, right? But that wasn't across everybody else, right? And so now you started leveraging these recommender models. Then you started leveraging kind of the higher level thinking, where now people are starting to think, can I make a recommendation, or can I put a different ad in front of this human being? Or can I change how they're interacting with my product based off of the data and what I'm predicting about this user? So then I could, again, for consumers, so I can enhance their experience, right? And this started becoming, God, I'm sound. We talked 25 years, we talked my age. So the golden age right now of like where data really truly became one of the more important aspects to business, right? And this is that time frame right now, 2012, 2013, 2014. 2014, that's where in the United States, mobile devices and access to the internet on mobile devices surpassed desktop.
That's when the iPhone came out, right? Like around that time.
Yeah. So that's 2014.
Actually, earlier, like the iPhone came out like just before.
It came out earlier.
Yeah, but then it went through that evolution where it got into all the pockets.
And listen, everything we're talking about, Laz, you have to think about adoption curves, right? You have these first adopters, again, to be cliche about them, and then how long does it take for somebody else to adopt? It takes time. Why? Because people don't know how to do it, right? Now people are waiting, and then people are then researching, how do you take this really interesting, cool idea, big data science, predicting, evolving what people do, how do you take that and actually use it, right? This is where now you have consulting companies doing research, talking to all these big companies saying, hey, how did you do it? Okay, we're going to put a framework together. Now we're going to go sell that framework. And people start buying those frameworks. Then people started hiring these individuals, and people started saying, hey, why don't you go get a data science degree? Or at that time, why don't you just go get a stats degree?
Yeah.
Why don't you learn how to use these tools? I was self-taught how to use R. It was, after that startup, I was in FP&A at Amazon. So,
What was that role about?
And that was like 2010 to 2012 time frame for me. This is a great story also about mentorship, and we'll get to this in a minute. But I transitioned, and so how does a self-taught analyst move from data and analytics to finance, right? It was just for my ability to forecast, my ability to take data and not just report history, but think about the future, right?
Did Gartner already have that maturity framework of descriptive, predictive, prescriptive?
Yep.
Did they already have that? When did they come up with that? You remember?
I'm sorry, who?
Gartner.
Oh, Gartner. I don't know. I'll be.
But that kind of immersion that became.
Yeah, I think it was right around that time that Gartner did that, right? But that's when that framework kind of came out, right? And so for me, I moved into Amazon. Purely on my knack of understanding how to use data and how to forecast and predict, right? And so hence like the FP&A role, right? And I'll just sidebar real quick. I think a mentorship is extremely important. I at that time had a mentor through university. I got my MBA at Seattle University, and through that program, they took business leaders in that area and paired them up with students, right? Especially master's students, and I got paired up with a woman, Colleen Brown. I don't even know if Colleen knows how influential she's been in my career.
Shout out to her.
Probably a shout out to Colleen Brown. She was the CEO of Fisher Communications, which are all the TV stations in the Seattle area. And so I met with her and talked to her about the opportunity. So this is where I worked in data and BI. I was offered a role in FP&A. And I told her, I said, I don't know if I'm going to take this job. And she's like, why? And I said, I'm scared. She's like, what are you scared of? And I was like, I've never done it before. So she asked me a couple of very simple questions, right? And I try to use some of her principles, even now as I mentor people, which is, she goes, how well can you do your job? Don't be humble. Like, how well are you at your job on a scale of 1 to 100?
Be real, don't be humble, yeah.
Be real with me. And she was like, well, I was like, I'm pushing up towards that 100% mark and that, 90 in the 90 percentile or in the not 90%, 90% mark. She goes, how well can you do this new job? I go, maximum 30% out of scale, 30 out of 100. She goes, that's why you have to take it. She goes, because that's where you're going to learn the most. And I was like, well, what if I fail? Right? I have a partner with me out in Seattle. She's in school. I can't fail. We won't be able to pay rent. She goes, you won't let yourself fail. So I took the job. And my boss at that time, another shout out, Ezra Albrecht, one of the great guy, great leader, great manager. He was like, you do things I can't teach you to do.
Is this at Amazon?
At Amazon.
Oh, okay.
You do things I can't teach you to do. I can teach you how to balance. I can teach you how to balance a budget. That I know. But your ability to forecast, your ability to say, I'm going to take all of these inputs, all of these various data inputs, and make sense of them to say, okay, here's what I think we're going to do. For example, if you're making widgets, right? Well, there's always going to be how many components are coming in at one time? How fast does the machine or the human work to then put this widget together, right? And then that's your output. And based off of how many widgets we have to make, that's how many heads we need to then either run the machines or actually put these widgets together. But then there's this interesting idea of productivity. So how do you measure productivity, and then how do you layer that into your forecast? So if I'm making my team 15% more productive, now just getting to that 15% number is hard. How do you measure productivity gains? So now if you're telling me I need 100 more people because our target is X, I'm saying, well, no, you don't need 100 more people. You actually only need 85 because of the productivity gains that we've increased over the time, right? And so that's where I started getting a little bit more into that predictive analytics, right? And then that migrated me into Google, right? And then I think at Google, that's where
What year are we at?
right around 2012, 2013.
Okay, still okay.
frame.
How long have you spent at Amazon?
Amazon, I was there for 2 years.
Okay, 2 years.
Yep.
Acquired a skill.
Acquired
That
some skills. That's where I started really, I keep saying stitching data together. That's where I started using data to drive business. I started thinking, and I'm going to use some terminology for my current work, but thinking like an owner, right? If I spend $1 here, what does that yield me? Amazon's fantastic at this. That's why they're so successful, right? If I spend $1 here, am I getting more than $1 back? Because if I'm not, then why am I doing it? Or maybe I spend $1 today and get 90 cents back, but then next year I'm only getting 90 cents back. Well, what if I tell you if you spend $1 today on A, and you're getting $1.10 back every time you spend $1? That's great, right? It's a good return. But what if that's just consistent over time? Now, what if I tell you for 2 years, you only get 90 cents back, but every year after that, you get $3 back for $1 spent because of what we gain in that 2-year period? Then you're starting to think about forecasting, think about planning. That's what it really helped me at Amazon, is really thinking about the business and what are we doing with the business, and how am I tying data to outcomes? How am I tying data to product? How am I tying data to actually what truly, truly, truly matters to what the business is trying to drive? That was one of my big pieces of education from Amazon, right? It's not about just data. It's about all the other components of the business that work together. The commercial teams, the marketing teams, the product teams. And thinking about what is everyone doing cohesively in order to drive what essentially every business is just trying to drive a few things, right? I mean, Amazon's trying to move product.
It's a biggest retailer in the world, right?
Yeah, at that time, I mean, streaming just started coming out and Prime and all that, but they're trying to move product because that's how you make your money, right? And so that was that big education for me. And transitioning then into Google, that helped me a lot. At Google, I worked with a lot of partners there, right? Helping them with their businesses, right? Helping them from a data and analytics perspective, saying, are you harnessing data in a way, and are you looking at your data in a way that it's as helpful as it can be to your business?
If you can talk about it, what kind of companies are you working with through Google? And you don't need to name a company.
No,
but you know, what are we thinking?
No. So when I first started there, it was automotive.
Okay.
At this point, I moved to Detroit. I worked a lot in the automotive sector.
Motor City, yeah.
Motor City, worked with a lot of automotive, and then had the experience of working with a lot of internal teams also, and evolving some of their data, some of the data practices there, and then that extrapolated into partnering with other industries, media and entertainment, consumable goods. So ended up partnering with a lot of different businesses.
Because also the reason I'm asking is because we've been talking about Amazon, which is the biggest and arguably the best retailer in the world. So analytics was such an easy way for them. And when I say easy, it's like an obvious way for them to improve business performance. And then we saw this in retail, like Best Buy. I'm also just trying to place this in the economic context as well, that in 2008, there was the big economic downturn.
Yep.
Right. And during that time, I know that Best Buy was one of the only, if not the only, big retailer that came out of that financial downturn in a better way that they went into it. And it was because how they leveraged data. So specifically, I know their SVP of Insights, Bill Hoffman, shout out to Bill. That's why I learned from, about business analytics. And then it kind of spread from those obvious, those usual suspects to other industries. So what did you see at Google to be that were the biggest hurdles for these big companies to adopt these data-driven practices?
Yeah, I think it is getting stuck in how they've always done it. I mean, how many people have you talked to where somebody they work with, their reply is, "This is just how we do it." Right? And I think it's when you work with industries who have a legacy and a history, right, over time. Let's anchor on automotive. People have been selling and driving cars and building cars for a long time, right? Over 100 years. And I'm talking rewind now 12 years, 13 years rewind. And now you have someone who's been doing their job for 30 years, doing it well. The ecosystem has changed. And not only the data ecosystem, just the ecosystem in general, right? How you sell, how people get information, the proliferation of information and how people consume information went on a rocket ship.
Yeah.
Why? The internet and data. I mean, do you go to a travel agent to book your flights? There's still travel agencies out there. My parents used to have one. But that industry took a tank if you didn't go digital.
Yeah.
Right? So you have people who are marketing outdoors or only on TV or only on billboards and putting signs on the sides of the road and saying, that's the only way I'm going to get people into my business to then sell my product, which at that point was a vehicle. Versus saying, are you leaning into digital? And are you leaning into the information and the data? And I think that's a huge hiccup for a lot of companies. Companies born in digital, the maturation curve or the adoption curve is much lower for them than it is for some of these legacy companies that have been doing stuff for a long time. And I think that was the hard part. I think that was the hard part. Walking into a room and convincing somebody that what they've been doing for the last 25 years isn't the way you should do it in the next 10. Right? And then also, you have a whole bunch of, if I could just be honest, right? You have a whole bunch of young 20, 30-year-old professionals that are raised and bred in this environment that can speak to this new age of information and technology and data. And you're talking to people who are honestly towards the end of their careers. That some of them adopted, but some of them didn't. And I think that dichotomy was a little challenging.
What was your approach to this to crack that code?
Yeah.
Right. So finding yourself in those rooms, you understand the technology. So what was your way of figuring it out? What did you try? What worked? What failed?
I failed so much in my career, Les. And that's, you got to learn from your failures. That like you have to just learn from your failures. So for me, the things that I tried, like at the beginning, you just tried, honestly, almost like force feeding people. Hey, if you do this, this is just what you're going to get, and that's it. Like, this is the right way to do it, right? You started massaging that approach of listening, understanding what they're trying to do, and then very simply laying out how one approach could be more beneficial, but then testing it. I'm real big on small, short tests. You don't need to test everything for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Small, short tests where you can prove the incremental value, right? You can do this holdout and you can say, hey, I can drive X number more. And look, I proved it to you. Can we start expanding my ideas? And I think that's critical of like, you have to prove it. You can be academic about things, but you really truly have to like show people that what you're doing is going to have an impact to them. So I think that was probably my to get people to adopt new ways of thinking, new technologies. I mean, here, I'll tell you one of the biggest things. Think about it. 2014, that's where mobile surpasses desktop.
And that's a big moment. Yeah,
it's a huge moment. It's a huge moment. And listen, Google prepared you for these things. This is not like I created all this myself, right? Google prepared us very well. But you're walking into those rooms, just think from a media spend perspective, where we're saying you should probably put more money into mobile than you do desktop. And a lot of people are like, whoa, 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 whoa. But then you start having to prove it out, right? And this is where these tests come in. This is where the analysis comes in. This is where showing them that this higher order of thinking comes in, right? I think there's also this evolution for some of these legacy. I say legacy. Some of these businesses that are rooted in legacy, right? Where they look at certain things in certain ways, right? Well, my cost per acquisition, my CPAs are good, right? Versus saying, doesn't matter. If you're paying, again, I love talking examples. So if you're paying $1 and getting 10% back, that's good. That's good. But you don't want to pay $2. But what if I told you that paying $2 will give you 20% back? Is it about how much you're paying or how much you're getting it back in return? I mean, anyone in business will say, well, yeah, I'll take the 20% back. But that was a hurdle. That was a hurdle to say if you pay more, again, if you think about marketing, if you pay more, you're going to acquire better users or different types of users, and those users pay back more. Again, this is the
cultural shift too.
Huge cultural shift for a lot of these companies. Yeah.
And then from Google, so you've been working also internally at Google.
Yeah.
On elevating Google's data-driven practices.
We worked internally. Just about a lot of it was how we handled the data, what data was given to analysts. For my teams specifically, we started evolving. I evolved myself. This is where I started actually building models, building like I did some predictive models at Amazon where I was like predicting revenue, I was predicting throughput of certain products, and that was kind of like my boot camp of how I learned how to do that. Google was my adoption of technology. I adopted R pretty early on in my life at Google because I wanted to then think about that predictive nature of data and how can I do that at scale, right? I mean, you could always try to build a model like in Excel because that was probably done quite a bit. SQL, I got a lot of SQL training, but just like self-taught, honestly, at Amazon. Google also helped just elevate how I think about SQL and just extracting data and using SQL to manipulate data. And so that's where, for me personally, being curious in this new evolution of how people think and how people look at data and how people harness not only what the data is, but what you can do with it. I've always been curious. Like, I'm infinitely curious, right? And so I think that's what helped me in my career progression is saying, okay, here's something new, right? I've never seen this before, never used it before. Yeah, like there's not a lot of there's not textbooks out there. Like I didn't learn this in university, but want to know what? I mean, I can learn about it online. I can take maybe a small online course and teach myself, or I can ask maybe one person who might know how to do it. There's one person who taught me how to use R. It was somebody internal to Google that knew how to use it. And I was like, can you teach me?
And
he's like, well, let's find some time. So it was over some time. And I was like, hey, here's a problem that I'm trying to solve, right? I was trying to predict something for actually a partner. And so, he walked me through how to do it. And then I started doing it and started messing it up and started failing and taking my code back to him and learning. And then this is where I started going to Git, right? And like extracting information from third-party sources and techniques and people sharing online. And so for me, that's when I elevated my own technical skills, right? In order to honestly do my job better.
And now that you mentioned models, right? Maybe that's the right moment for us to also bring in machine learning and AI because it started to emerge. So for that, because it's a big shift too. So back in the 80s, when we talked about AI, right? That was in a very different context for that. We did not know on what technology will AI be built, right? So back then when we talked about AI, we thought about an autonomous kind of super intelligence. In sci-fi, we had examples of that, and we always had this idea of it's kind of like a a mind with an identity, with a center. But then, interestingly enough, AI as we know it today, it emerged from basically models, right? Like machine learning models.
They're data science models.
Exactly. Just quite a different thing.
Automated and beefed up, right?
Yeah. So
to be super simple about it.
exactly. Can we talk about this a little bit? Because a lot of the people who will be watching this, they are not even data professionals. I'm sure, a lot of data savvy, data interested CEOs are watching this. So just so we can understand AI today, just looking at the past 10 years of that evolution of machine learning, like how did that play a role in your career? How do you see the importance of that increasing over the years? Maybe you can just talk about the first years.
Sorry, I want you to repeat the question.
Sure. So basically, if you think about machine learning and AI, when did that become something that organizations started to focus on, right?
Yep.
When did it become kind of like this hotspot, this important thing that investment started to go into it and attention was directed to it, machine learning and AI?
Yep. It's a wonderful question. I would say, and I can't speak to, of course, every company, but in my experience, what really started coming through, and I'm going to go back and then we're going to move forward into what I'm doing today. But when I was at Google, I think a lot of it started with measurement. Okay. So another wonderful education that I got at Google, where I'm leaning into the unknown, was marketing mix modeling and multi-touch attribution, right? Marketing mix modeling being, if you had to look back and redistribute marketing dollars, how would you better redistribute them to then drive some sort of action, which is an activation or a sale, right? Some KPI. So how are you measuring? That's my question. So this is all measurement. And then multi-touch attribution, which is, now that everything is digital, not everything, but a lot of things are digital, the majority of interactions are digital. How do you give fair credit to all of those touch points? Right? And these are all models. These are all machine learning data science models that are saying, well, if I put one more dollar into TV, does that increase my social awareness? Well, yeah, it does. But how much? You have to model that out. Mm-hmm. And then where is that efficient frontier or the diminishing returns curve, right? And so this is all data science model. These are advanced models that you're pulling not one model together. You're pulling several models together, several packages within a model, and then models themselves together to then get a view of looking back and saying, okay, we would have been better if we did something else, if we did X. Right? If we change our marketing mix, we would have drove X number of more activations. That's a missed opportunity for us.
Yeah.
So this is where I think a lot of companies started really adopting machine learning models, right? Which is the bedrock of AI.
Yeah.
Right? Also recommender systems, recommender models. Like I said, going back, like Netflix, they launched their recommender model long before a lot of other people. Amazon even earlier than them. But a lot of companies, were they actually running these like recommender systems, recommender models? Are they predicting player values? Or I say player values, customer values? Are they predicting churn? Like all of these predictive models that now you have the data and you have the technology that you can harness in order to get that information. So I think that's the mid 2010s from 2012, probably 2014 through 2019, 2020, right? You're seeing a lot of companies started leaning into data science models and taking that output and really truly understanding their customers at, again, higher magnitude, higher order of intelligence of understanding the behaviors that they're doing and actually how you can shift those behaviors, right? So I think that's where people really started leaning in, which is kind of, for me, it started with measurement, right? How are you measuring these things? And they were all advanced modeling. Then now you start getting into AI. Right? I mean, the development of AI, I don't have to say this, right, which has been over the last handful of years. I've never seen an industry evolve so quickly than I've seen what the AI ecosystem evolve, right? From what it was even 5 years ago. Like what it was 5 years ago can't even scratch the surface of what it can do today, we won't be able to scratch the surface of what it can do in 5 years, by the way. I think there's so much headroom there that people can grow. But I think, sorry to answer your question, I think it started back in the mid 20 teens.
Because I'm very interested in the language of these things, right? So if you look at the history of it, then in the beginning you have the databases, and then a term like business intelligence emerges, right? And then we kind of get into, now we have, advanced analytics and data science. So the language changes around these things.
Yeah.
But the transitions are not necessarily, these waterfall moments, but they kind of bleed into each other.
They 100% bleed into each other.
So from your perspective, because I'm just so interested and I'm selfish about this, I want to find out from your perspective, what is the main difference from your perspective between a machine learning model and a non-machine learning model, right? So how did that change?
When you say non-machine learning model,
okay,
like AI models essentially are some level of machine learning model.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So when we talk about these things, machine learning and AI, I'm trying to conceptualize the direction of what is truly at the heart of these technologies. How we start calling them differently. And today, when we talk about AI, why AI is growing so quick, right? What are the reasons? Well, of course, the technology is enabling it. Right, or that it's being built on a digital continent, so we haven't done that before, right? When we have the digital foundations for something, but also it has to do with the quote unquote meme power of AI, right? That's why the investment is going into it, and the attention and the FOMO and all that, right? So I think the language is important.
I think it is important. I think so. For me, a machine learning model, you are the one telling the model what to specifically use, like what type of techniques to use. You're saying use this package, use this model, right? Like we're going to load all this data in, and then a lot of it's also you're engineering the data elements that are going into there. You're picking the ones that are the most sensible things to go in there. I think what AI, the evolution there is, and this is what makes it so incredible, is you no longer have to tell it what specific data to use. You no longer have to tell it what specific techniques to use. The machine itself is figuring out those things, right? At a rate that it's almost impossible for a human to do. Right?
It's highly automated. Those decisions.
Yeah, it's highly automated, right? Because it can go through, take a slew of data, train a XGBoost model to then drive my one output, and then it'll retrain a CatBoost model at the exact same time and tell you this model's better than that one, and not even tell you, just pick the one that's better. It would take a human being time to do that, where the machines can do that almost instantaneously. So it is making those decisions, right? It's making those decisions for itself. And that's where I think a lot of the power and a lot of the concern is, right? Are you harnessing that in a way that is productive to your company or to your business or to whatever it is that you're doing? But also, do you have enough oversight over it? And do you trust it? Will it continuously make the right decision for you? Or are these decisions going to be adverse to your business, right? Because when you have a machine learning model, they're advanced, you have highly skilled and wickedly smart people who pull these machine learning models together, but you monitor them. Yeah, you reevaluate them. You then retrain the model every X number of months, days, weeks, whatever, on whatever cadence you want, and you're evaluating your own outputs continuously. You're monitoring drift. You're saying, hey, is my from what should actually happen, are we continuously getting off of what should, and so are we fine tuning then our models, right? Versus AI, that'll just do it itself, so you never have to worry about it. You should still monitor, but then I think this is where that changes, because the machines are actually doing all of these human elements that took time to do previously.
So AI is becoming more and more prominent, and you go from Google to FanDuel.
That's right.
Why?
The challenge, right? For me, it was the challenge and the increased scope of the role. I think the difference was at Google, I was very focused on analytics. I was very focused on data models, but it didn't give me that area to explore more of the technology side. Like there's still technology that we use. I'm talking about underlying infrastructure, right? I'm talking about like we would guide people on how to do it. But again, it's very consulting based. You're talking to a partner and you're saying, hey, you should, instead of having these silo databases, you should have a Delta or a data lake, right? And so I wanted to do it myself.
You used to tell people how to build that car, but now you're building your own.
I want to build it. I wanted to build it. I think one thing that's consistent throughout my career, Laz, is I'm consistently uncomfortable. And I like being consistently uncomfortable, right? I like putting myself in a position where I'm like, I know how to do this. What's the next thing? What is emerging that I don't really like? It's not crystallized yet. Cool. I want to go work on that. And I think this is where we're talking about AI, right? Going to FanDuel was an amazing place to work.
You joined as a VP of data.
I joined
that was
as
the title. What did it actually encompass?
It was VP of BI, and then it evolved into a VP of data, right? So when I joined and I had a team less than 20 people, analysts and data scientists only. I think my data science team was 3, right? And so you had like a handful of analysts, handful of data scientists, and it evolved to, I mean, you're pushing 100 people, right? And I was there for about 4 years.
From what year? Just so again I can place it.
I joined there in 2011.
2011. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No.
All right,
Of course.
back up.
Yeah.
Sorry, 2011.
I was like, wait a second.
Yeah. Okay. Ask me that question again.
So when did you start your role at FanDuel?
I started my role at FanDuel in 2021. And so moved over to be, like I said, VP of BI. That evolved, right? Because my interests took me on the infrastructure side. Now, there's a great partner on the VP of data engineering that I partnered with. Engineering and then the practitioners of the data were not joined up. So at first, I was focused on evolving analytics, instead of being reporting mechanisms, to delivering a lot of insights, right? There's always going to be this like mixture, but we evolved quite a bit of, instead of just giving data and giving reports and giving data and giving reports, to like automating these types of things, giving people access to the data that they need, and then actually getting into insights. Data science, I thought, was, I mean, I say this all the time, it can create a moat for you when it comes to you and your competitors. And what I mean by that is it can give you this competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. And that competitive advantage can be based solely on what do you know about your customers, and then how are you interacting to engage with them better. And I think that's the key that can help drive a business, but then worked on the data science side quite a bit. And that team ended up growing significantly over time. I stood up a data product team. So people are like, well, what do you mean data product?
No, exactly.
Right? I'm a big believer data is a product. Just like you have a product organization and a product team that delivers products to your customers. For example, at FanDuel, they were, it was in online betting, right? It could be sports betting, it could be casino, it could be horse racing. And the product team was there to deliver an experience to the customers. I think the same way about data. I'm a firm believer that data is a product. And so for me, we had a product team that was working directly with the engineers, directly with the analysts and data scientists, and directly with the stakeholders saying, what type of products do you want? How do you want to consume information? How do you make decisions? How can I help you make decisions faster and quicker? Can I, instead of giving you a piece of data where then you go click a button, can I just click the button for you? Can I automate this? So we stood up a product team that would, again, they would manage it just like anyone else. They would manage the workflows of the engineers, how the engineers ingested the data, how they structured the data, the tables that were built, so analysts can use them. We would then use technology in order to facilitate data across the company, to get people the right data in the right time, to evolve how they consumed data. Right? Is it a static report that you open in your email every day? Which, by the way, we still do today. Right? A lot of people do it. I use those things today. They're important.
No.
Versus, can I give you a mechanism or technology where you can now interact with the data? This number doesn't look right. Can I drill in to see why? Right? Versus doing your own analysis or automate that analysis for you. So I was able to evolve that team, worked really closely with the VP of data engineering there, created a joint team, right? So it was a big data practice. So I had a wonderful experience there. But what it taught me is the importance of infrastructure, right? How are you consuming data? How are you ingesting it? Where do you store your data? How do you store your data? Do you monitor as data comes in? How are you architecting your data? Right? How do you calculate metrics? Is it uniform? Or does everyone just have their own way of calculating? Right? And so for me, that's all ecosystem. That is all architecture, infrastructure, and what I think is critically important, which is governance. Is the data secure? Is the data compliant? Is the data safe? Are we uniform in our approach of how we again if I'm going to do a calculation, like what is a retention rate? Is it different to every business unit within the company, or is it the same? Maybe it is a little bit different, and that's okay. But if it's different within a business unit, I want it to be the same within that business unit. I don't want people to say, well, hey, well, could you just write down the calculation for me so I can do it on my end? No, right? And so I think it gave me the ability to lean into that space, which was really, truly interesting to me. A lot more on the technology and engineering side.
So you think of yourself as a technologist. I see you as a great technologist, right? So
I appreciate the great in front of that. I if I had to label myself, I'm a technologist. Yeah.
When did you become a technologist?
You know what? I don't even know. I've always been a technologist. The reason I've always been a technologist is I've always leaned into the new, innovative, new technologies coming out. I think people, again, I'll go back. I like being uncomfortable. Hey, this is new. Okay, cool. Let me dive into it. I don't like to wait to say, well, this is how you use it. Don't be prescriptive with me. Just let me try. And so going all the way back to evolution of digital marketing, to analytics tools, to databases, to meshing things together, to SQL, to R, to Python. I've always been interested in technology, right? And all of these have these underlying other infrastructures that you understand. But I think it's always been part of who I am, to lean into something new, interesting, sometimes scary, but yeah.
So let's look at something new, something scary. Again, that's how a lot of people see AI.
Yeah.
Something new and something scary. So can you maybe talk about the role of AI during your time at FanDuel from a narrative perspective? When did that become important from the company's perspective, if it did?
Yeah.
During your stint there.
During my stint there were bits and pieces of it. but it was never organized in a way that scaled, right? For me, I think that AI was used in certain areas. And I think this is how, like, AI does not need to be centralized. AI does not have to be run by one team, right? I think AI lives everywhere. So I think it was used in a lot of really important, smart areas. And I think they are continuously evolving. I mean, we meet with partners now, technology partners are saying, hey, and they're showing us use cases from our counterparts in the market and in the industry. I think that from when I started there to when I left, which was 2024, the evolution of AI, right? Again, I'll use the proliferation of that evolution of AI was so vast. You couldn't do in 2022 even what you can do in 2020, not even close.
No, ChatGPT was the watershed moment,
That
right?
100% was a watershed moment, right?
So what happened there? Can we just look at that time? You were at FanDuel, and I remember hearing first about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Right, and we were, I've been in the data space at that point for almost 10 years now, over 10 years. So what happened there? And that's actually a great segue to what's happening today with AI. So let's just look at this whole generative AI, large language models. Again, a lot of the listeners are not even data professionals; they're just very interested in it.
Yeah.
Right? So from your perspective, how did that shake out?
I think people started using ChatGPT, and I think people started hearing about it, right? And you could do anything there from drop an email to say, "Hey, make this email crisp," to I'm sure everyone's tried it. I want to take my spouse out on a night on the town from this and this hour, and we want to eat this cuisine and have this experience. It'll map out in the evening for you. And I think people started thinking, wow, this is really powerful. And it's not about that, like you said, that was the moment that companies started leaning in and saying, how can I take that technology and embed it? I mean, a lot of companies are just taking those and then other AI technologies and embedding them into their own tech stack, and then turning around and using that to help other companies, right? And so I think the excitement about being able to, from an operations standpoint, give people time back, from a productivity standpoint, increase it significantly, and then from a innovation standpoint, like what can you do or what can't you do with this, right? Because there's so many things. Can you forecast your financial outlook for the next 5 years using AI? Probably do it pretty simply based off of your history, based off your trajectory. And then you can tell it to go scrape the web and how your competitors are doing, and then mash that together and give you a really sensible, probably pretty accurate. How are you doing that, right? And so I think it's the art of the unknown of, hey, we can use this in so many different areas. But I also think this is the crux of it. There's a high percentage of companies, I think it was like 94% is the last stat that I read, of companies that are highly investing in AI this year. But it's also like over 75% of companies have seen no return on their AI investment to date. So it's exciting, it's new, but people aren't seeing the return.
I actually have a few questions around that.
Yeah.
So I remember when ChatGPT arrived, and I was like, wow, this is mind blowing. And we had all kinds of assumptions, and I can just write a whole blog with like 30 posts in a weekend. Obviously, it's not true at the end of the day, but it seems like it. I remember like a very tangible thing. You remember when in 2024 I went on a European trip for 3 weeks, right? And I had to organize it in like 3 days, and I used ChatGPT to give me the general, like, how should we do it logistically? I had to optimize it, but it was huge help. I wouldn't have been able to do it without it, right? So there are some things that we assume that AI can do, and it surprises us too. It's like, wow, it's more useful in some areas than I thought. What do you think, from your perspective, what are some of the hidden strengths of AI that people don't necessarily realize, and what are some of the limitations that you think will result in some heartbreak or corrections in the market potentially?
Yeah, I think the strengths are the operational effectiveness that can drive. Now, it scares people because I think people get scared about jobs. I'll just be very frank, right? I don't think of it that way. I think that if you can increase someone's throughput or even automate a process, you have good people that you've hired for a reason, and those people can work on harder things, right?
They're gonna get uncomfortable.
Make it uncomfortable. They can work on harder things, right? And I think the operational aspect of AI and the value it can give you operationally is unbelievable, right? I think from a content generation perspective, like I'm very, very bullish on what it can do. I think they can generate a lot of really meaningful content that can definitely help a business, right? And that could be content on your site. That could be content on your in your marketing. That I think just content generation in general. I think some of the things that people don't truly understand about AI is it's only as good as the data that it sits on. Now, I might be in the minority on this, and that's okay. I've tested AI models, a few of them, just LLMs. This is when I was at FanDuel. And the error rate was significantly higher than I expected. And we would give them access to 2 or 3 very simple tables of data and ask them very simple questions like, hey, how many people did we acquire in March? And how many people, and what was that versus March last year and the year before? And can you give us the current retention rates of those users, right? And all of a sudden it's like, they would give you an answer and then you would look and be like, it's not the right answer. Okay? So people think you can just throw it at anything. And a lot of companies will be like, no, it'll organize the data for you. Okay, be mindful. I think this is where people are not seeing the value. I'm very big on data infrastructure and ecosystem. I'm very big on data governance, and I'm very big on these models and these AI models, and even these agentic models are only as good as the data that they're sitting on today. Will that evolve where they'll be able to organize the data by themselves? Yes. We will get there, but not right now, and I've seen it in my own tests. And so that's where currently, as I'm looking at evolving AI for my organization, BetMGM, it's about the infrastructure and the data that we're putting into these models and into any agents or into anything that we do with AI at this point. Are we giving it clean, good data? And I'm not saying like simple data. I'm just talking about clean data, right? And maybe you even use AI to clean the data. So it's like there's these bits and pieces. So it's not like, oh, we're just going to throw this all into one AI for people who are not the data practitioners. You could say, I want to use AI to ingest the data. Bam, that's one use case for it. Now I want to use it to organize my data. Yes, you should have quality checks, but that's another AI agent and or model, right? Now I want to then access that data. That's another so you can start nesting these AI models very much like you could nest SQL functions, right? Together to then make sense out of your data. But we're taking the approach of organizing our information and then giving AI the right information to then help us evolve the way that we use data.
So this is also the kind of the final destination for like today's conversation, this one, because now you're at BetMGM and you've been there for how long?
About 10 months.
10 months. Okay. So what are you excited about today about your job? And then how are you planning on leveraging the lessons that you've learned over the past 25 years to make this next 25 even better?
First, I can't speak enough about the organization itself, right? Some of the smartest people I've ever worked with. Open, collaborative, just the culture there is second to none. I'll tell you that right now. People are also interested, and I would also say most people I work with are pretty much technologists as well. They're interested in the space, and they see value in the space. And so it gives me the opportunity to then take what I know about the space and try to deliver back to the business. And that's what's exciting to me. That people in the culture there are open to it and they see the value in it. What I've learned over time is it's going to be critical on the delivery. It's just like anything. Like I work there and I need to deliver back to the business. So when we're talking about, oh, we're going to deploy this thing, if you're going to talk about ML model, like let's get it out the door. Let's actually see what it does. Let's see how it helps our customers have a better experience, or anything AI that we might be venturing into from an operations standpoint. Is it really yielding anything? Right? Are we getting any time back for people? Or are they just spending more time quality checking the AI? Right? And so it's about organizing yourself, being a little bit more diligent. One thing that I've learned over my career is just sometimes you have to, like I like to move very fast, but you have to be thoughtful in the speed in which you move. Right? And so when it comes to especially AI, we're trying to move fast, but we're not moving too fast where it could become problematic. Like I said, organize your information, running the right use cases, running the right tests, but also a thing that I'm excited about is we're trying to enable everyone at the company to be able to use AI in whatever way they want, but with some level of governance on top, right? Not that we have to oversee every single thing, but you have to give people the right information and the right frameworks in order to then go and use what is going to be useful to them, right? And so I think those are from a data perspective. I'm just excited about the company. The company itself is. I see great things for us in the very, very near future and in the long term. I think it's a great place to work, and I think it's just. It's going to make some moves in the space.
Well, having worked with you for the past 3 years or so,
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see what you make of the opportunity. I'll definitely follow along. And like as our time today is coming to an end, this was a really fun ride, a very fun journey. Learned a lot today, sir. So
appreciate
thank you for coming, and hopefully it wasn't the last one.
Yep. Appreciate it. And then I just want to say thank you because, putting always uncomfortable, talking about my story and my journey. I mean, this isn't what I do every day, right? But if I could share any lessons with anyone listening, from a data practitioner to not a data practitioner to just leadership, right? As my career has gone from marketing, analytics, finance, big tech, gaming, which has been parallel to digital marketing, digital transformation, cloud computing, data science, now AI, right? To just tell people that impact compounds over time. You can try to do the right thing today. Short-term wins don't always mean long-term gains, right? Impact does compound over time. Be uncomfortable. Number one trait for anyone that I ever look for on my teams is curiosity. Be infinitely curious. Delve into something that's new to you. Get good at what you do and then dive into something new, right? And then just build the functions that you need to build, right? Right? There's these functional things, and I think that's another lesson. Like these functional things as you grow in your career, where you want to build the foundations and the functions that are the most useful. And then I think my one last thing is we talked a lot about data, we talked a lot about technology. There's a huge human element to this, and I'll self-proclaim I'm a people leader first. And so there's a human side, an understanding of what the humans do, understanding of how the humans even leverage the technology, or so it's all about also coaching and leadership as well throughout this entire journey. But appreciate it.
Absolutely. And again, it's been fascinating for me to also learn from you and your experiences. And maybe on the next podcast, we can talk more about your personal coaching too, because you are very much someone who drinks his own Kool-Aid even outside of work. But maybe that's a story for another day. And again, thank you for your time today, and until next time.
Thanks, Les.